welcome to Anne-Marie's Workshop. My name is Anne-Marie, and I love to make things. If you like to make things, then you have found your spot. Please like, subscribe, and share, and let's get into what we're making today. Today, I have decided to work on Simplicity 9476. This pattern is still, it's brand new in spring. It is this 2022. It is still inside the pattern drawers, so I'm not making something that you cannot find. It is, I hope for this to be an apple-shaped woman's dream, because I love, even though this lady is hourglass shaped, I noticed this ruching in the middle. And ruching really works well for those of us who do not have a thin waist. So let's get started. So first things first, I'm going to unpack all of the pattern pieces that I already cut out a while back. All right, so I am doing a combination of 18, 22, 24, depending upon my particular shape, because this is a dress that's does have a kind of defined waist. Though it is ruched, I know that that is my area that, you know, needs some accommodations. All right, so this dress took 2 7/8 of base fabric, and then 5 yards, 60 inches wide of overlay fabric. So there's already cut out and we're ready to get go. All right, first things first, I like to lay out all my pattern pieces so I can see them, to see if I've made any kind of mistake and not cut everything out. My next step is I'm going to wind about 2 or more bobbins just to make sure I don't run out of fuchsia thread halfway through. Now, starting with piece 1, make sure after you've cut out all your pieces that you have placed all your notches and markings on your pattern pieces so it's easy for you to assemble. I love to make a little snip on my triangles. Make sure that doesn't go all the way through 5/8 into your seam allowance. But it helps me keep track of things that might be important, that they wouldn't put them here if you didn't need them. Now, step number 1, they would like you to stitch between the 2 circles that you marked on your pattern, between the circles, to stay stitch. It really helps keep the neckline in place as you start to maneuver with different types of fabrics. Don't forget the stay stitching on the underside of the of this bodice piece. Now you're going to attach the side fronts to the bodice fronts on that same line that you used, that same seam that you used to add your stay stitching to. Okay? Now, if your edges didn't line up perfectly here at the bottom and at the top, check your alignment again. Sometimes when you're pinning curves, you can get all out of place, and you really need this all to line up. Now you've stitched both of these pieces in place, go ahead and you're going to press this seam allowance towards the front. Now remember, in really great sewing, you are ironing almost as much as you are sewing. I didn't used to believe it, but the garment just comes out so much better. Now it's time to work on the back bodice, piece number 10. We're going to clip our markings on our pattern, those triangles, make sure so that they match up when you put the whole thing together. And we're also going to trace our dart onto our fabric. Now, I am not going to assume that you know what I mean when I say to trace a dart, because I had this conversation with my daughter, who I taught to sew, who has made so many garments, and I asked her for her tracing wheel when I was at her in her studio last month, and she blinked at me, and she was like, "What are you talking about?" And I thought, oh, the shame of it. How did I not teach her this? How? Anyway, I won't let that happen to you. Now, if you're an old sewer, you make your darts however you're going to make your darts. All right, for those who don't know, they have this stuff called tracing paper. Okay, so you are going to take your tracing paper. You can see this has been around the block a few times. And you are going to slide it under your fabric. I'll show you how that goes. Very simple. I'm going to slide it here and here, in between the tissue and the top, and in between the bottom, so that I can trace with my trusty tracing wheel. Da-da! And I'm going to trace this dart, and it will give me a nice outline on the other side, so it will direct me on sewing my dart. You see that faintly blue line? That lets me know what I need to sew together to make my dart. If you do yours with chalk, that's cool too. But this is the old 1977 home ec way to do it. Now, once you have marked your darts, you can start off at the very end and line up those markings, and then find the very tip or the very edge of where the dart ended, and you can finger press it so you can kind of get an idea of what the other side, if it's lining up. That's how I do mine. And then I put a pin through and say, does it line up? And then I do it again. Does it line up? Not so much. Have to adjust a little bit. Does it line up? Perfect. All the way to the tip. All right. That is one dart pinned. I'm going to do the other one, and then we can get prepped to sew it. Then go ahead and stitch the other side the same way you did the first one. No noise. All right, so now I am going to stitch from the bottom of the bodice piece, the back bodice piece, along the dart line, and when I come to the end, I'm going to give myself some extra string. And I'm going to take my 2 strings, separate them out, and I'm going to knot them at the very end of that dart. It just works out better for me. I've tried to back stitch, but when I back stitch, every once in a while, I will catch some fabric or do something. This is much more efficient, and that dart is knotted. If this was a thicker kind of fabric, I would put a dab of fray check there too, just in case. But this is ready for pressing. I'm going to do the other one, and we are on to step number 4. Now look, it's a great time for a break too. If this is about 15 minutes of sewing. So if this is all you can get in, great time to Maybe press this, set it on the table, set it wherever you get to put your sewing, and take a minute. Maybe you need to come back tomorrow. Depends upon your schedule. If you're unsure about your fabric, you need to test it out on your iron, because it happens to me every once in a while. I'll press something and it'll catch on that iron. And you can always use a pressing cloth. 1 second. This is mine. So whenever I'm dealing with a fabric I'm not exactly sure about, I will put that in between my steam iron and my fashion fabric. Now it's time to work with our lace overlay. I think this is piece number 12. I'm going to put 2 gathering stitches at the top and at the bottom of this piece. I also have the back piece, piece number 13, and I'm going to do the very same thing. I'm going to put some gathering stitches along the top and at the sleeve, at the shoulder, and at the waistline. Now, if this is your first time sewing and you've decided to be brave and try this outfit, yay! That's how I messed up a lot of stuff before I got it right. Years. So don't you worry about it. And every once in a while, it'll pop out and you can wear it with pride. Every once in a while, you luck out and your machine wants to gather for you. Don't trust it. Make sure you have plenty of string, plenty of thread on either side, because remember, this is an overlay. We are going to match that onto that front piece that we just made. Okay, so don't trust it if yours happened to do what mine did, but double row so you can get that really fine gathered look. Now look, make the 2 gathering stitches. I always wanted to just make one. You have to do the 2 gathering stitches. So go ahead and make your stitch length as wide as you can. Make sure you give yourself lots of thread string. If you feel like it and you have the time, you can change your bobbin out to another color, like a white or something that you can really see. And that way, when you pull that string, you know you're catching the bobbin string rather than the stitching string at the top. I think I'm going to do that. Now, because I used a white bobbin thread, on my machine, the white thread in the bobbin is the thread that you can gather with. The pink one that I used in the top is the main stitch, and when you pull it, it kind of locks in place. So if I pull the white, I'll give you an example. It will help me gather. But if I pull the pink, It'll kind of lock it in place. Okay? So now I am going to match up my overlay pieces. You just be very careful also that you're going to be putting it on top of the overlay, not behind it. That's why it's overlay. I'm not trying to be a smarty, but sometimes these things happen to me too. And make sure that the pattern pieces line up, that you have the back on the back and the front on the front. All right, so this is one of those tasks that's going to take a little while. So what are we going to talk about while I am matching up my things and putting my gathers in place? And I guess the topic I want to talk about is managing your time when you're trying to sew. My time has opened up greatly because of retirement, but most people, you know, I wanted to sew, but it was really, really difficult with a career, children, community ties, other family, husband, all that kind of stuff. And I have sewn in every possible place you can imagine. I have sewn in my bedroom growing up. I have sewn in basements. I have sewn in garages. I have sewn with all my stuff underneath my bed. I've sewn in dorm rooms. I have sewn in closets. I have sewn everywhere that I can think of, kitchen, and I only came into a fully dedicated sewing room these past two houses. You know, when the kids were growing up and there was bedrooms available. So I know everyone can't keep their stuff out. I mean, you have to have some place to put dinner and such. So, you know, it would be great if you had a dedicated space, but if not, then just make your space something that you can manage to pick up and put away at a moment's notice. Or if you can even find an unused card table or something like that, or a guest bedroom, because let's face it, how often do guests come, right? So you deserve a sewing room. So you can always make it so that the two can coincide with one another. I had a guest room the last house, and I also had a sewing room. And you don't have to wait until your 50s to be able to get that. You can work something out. Now, as far as time management, it's, you know, when you have kids and they have to eat and they have to do homework and all that good stuff, then it's the 15, 20, 30-minute model. Nancy Zeman was a great teacher of that. She used to teach it on PBS, or public broadcast channel in your neck of the woods. And she would do something like she would sew in a zipper, or she would add some buttons, or she would cut a couple of pieces of the pattern out. She had all sorts of tasks, and I think I have one of her books around here, and it was like called 10, 20, 30 minutes to sew, and she would just show you what you could do within that time. And it really opened it up for me because I wanted to sew, but I had all of these obligations. And so now that I can dedicate myself to sewing, I'm very, very grateful, because if you put 15 minutes in to a garment, you'll be finished with it. It's going to happen. You just have to trust in yourself. Alrighty, now let's see. Oh, a little bit more. I'm using a lot of pins because this knit has a little bit of a stretch to it, and I really, really like it. I think I like the shadow it casts on the fuchsia under fabric, but it's crinkled. It's a little difficult because it's already gathered. So we'll see what kind of adjustments I'll have to make this work. But I'm going to pin these in place, and then I'm going to stitch them along the edge, or baste them. You can do it by hand if you'd like, and baste it in place, right? And baste it in place. And that is the effect. Hold on, let me see if I can get more. So this is a side front. You can see how the overlay hangs on it. And I'm going to do it on the next 3 pieces and stitch around the edge, and then we'll be ready to go to the next step. And then the next thing I have to do is go make some breakfast or some lunch for my dad. And I'll be back in the sewing room as soon as I can. Well, I took a little break. I hope you did too. Seeing about my dad. Not feeling too well today, so I'm keeping an eye on him. But time to get back to this dress. All right, so now that I have added my lace overlay to these pieces, I am going to stitch around the edge. You can baste it by hand in place if you'd like to. That's what the instructions say, but I'm just going to go around about a presser foot length of the way in, all the way around these edges before we start dealing with the lining. So I stitched the overlay onto one piece. I'm going to do it on the other remaining pieces, the other front half and the 2 back pieces. The most frustrating or the hardest part about this pattern is going to be this overlay. And I think because this is a crinkle lace that stretches a little bit, so I was having a little problem keeping it in place. But I will make sure that I'm more vigilant, and then we'll see how this all works out. All right, so I am finished the last piece, the last attachment of lace. Okay, so now I know, and I don't know if you'll be dealing with this, but you will be dealing with a lace overlay if you make this particular version. My lace was not just lace, it was crinkle lace. So I had to slow my machine down. I had to slow down. I think it would have been different if it was just a flat lace. I had to sew my machine down, and by the 3rd piece, I figured out that I also had to, as I sewed, I had to pull the pieces behind the presser foot, and somehow that kept the presser foot from diving into this crinkle or shifting. But I think that this is the hardest part of the dress, this overlay thing here. And so now we are ready to move on to the lining, which is a repeat of this without overlay, and then interfacing. All right, let's go. Now for my lining, I chose this voile that I had left over from a few other projects. I think these have been sleeves. I think it's been a tunic, but it's very, very lightweight and sheer because I'm using this as my lining as a cotton because it's so warm here in Jamaica. And there's so many places without air conditioning. And I want to make sure that this dress does not cause me to really, really sweat. So I'm using this, I do love a lining. That's a little loud. You may have picked that up on me. So I'm going to add the dart to this piece. I'm going to attach the front bodice to the side bodice. And then we'll come back and we'll add our interfacing and we'll get going. This dress goes real fast after this. right, so now that we have our interfacing fused, we are going to stitch the front to the back at the shoulder. It seems like it's okay. We just have to take out our gathering stitches. Now we're going to attach the two front bodice pieces in the front on the center seam of the dress. So when you stitch it, it will appear like it's supposed to, like a V-neck dress. Alrighty, I'm gonna pin my crinkle lace in place and test it on the inside, because this lace, it might want to bunch and I don't want to have to take it out again. Now I'm really pressing open my seams, because with the addition of the lace, we're going to really need these seam allowances to be pressed really flat, because we're about to add the lining and turn it inside out, and we don't want a great deal of bulk in the shoulder seams and in the mid-body front seam. So I'm really making sure. Now remember, I tested my fabric. I knew it could take this heat, but if you're dealing with lace and with taffeta or whatever you've chosen to make your dress out, please test your fabric with your iron on a scrap piece way before you get into working on it. All right, so far it's coming together. I'm going to put it on my mannequin and work on the other part. Time for interfacing. Now, while I unpin, and then I'm going to clip, and then I'm going to turn it inside out, I thought we would just chat for a minute. I notice that a lot of my subscribers are in a certain demographic, and also, usually when you subscribe to me, I tend to try and follow you back to your channel and subscribe to you. I've been really trying to do that for a long, long time. And since my demographic tends to be a little older, I thought we would talk about the fact that part of the wonderful thing about YouTube is while we can't guarantee that anything will last forever, right? But putting a few videos on your YouTube channel if you have nothing, I think it's a great idea, because I think if you have children or people who care for you, it would be nice to leave them a legacy of what you sound like, what your personality was like. So if you share the hobby that you love, and as your say grandkids get older, or your kids get older, and as you get older, you leave a legacy of your, your chatting. I'm thinking about, especially in my library section, reading old bedtime stories and stuff like that as another thing to leave for future grandchildren to listen to and know who you were. And it occurred to me, I thought, well, people are always saying how either they love social media or they don't care for social media. But there is a way to use it for good, I've enjoyed it. I mean, I have family all over this planet. My parents immigrated like the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park. And so I love being on Facebook and on YouTube and stuff, because it connects me to all these cousins I have who live so far away. I love seeing the births. I love seeing the graduations. I love, being in touch with my aunts and because I've got family in England, Canada, New York, Houston, all over the place. And so I love hearing what's happening in their life. So just an idea, because I would love to see what's going on and what things you're inspired to make and do and everything. So just if you don't have any videos, think about dropping a few on there for your family and friends. After pinning the front to the back at the neckline edge, I stitched all the way around the inside neckline and the inside back. Turned it inside out and snipped like every 4 inches or so along the edge so that the neckline was flexible. Now I'm going to understitch. Now understitching is when you attach you stitch through this fabric and the underlining, and you stitch very close to the edge here, and it secures this in place so that when it turns inside out, it stays put, so your thing doesn't roll out. So I'm going to under stitch my seam allowance to my lining along the edge, and it will keep it from rolling. So now you can see that I have attached all those seam allowances to the inside lining. So it won't roll forward and you won't see the lining. Okay, now it's time to sew the underarm area, sleeve area. Okay, so don't get confused. It can get tricky, but I think it'll be fine. I'm gonna line everything up and pin it before I stitch. All right, I am clipping the curve on my underarm so that it will lay smoother. And then I'm going to understitch again. So none of this delightful lining that makes me happy is shown to other people. Now they don't ask you to understitch the inside of the underarm, but because I use this dramatic lining, I'm going to try and see how far I can get up this underarm and understitch it in place. It's coming together, my loves. It's gonna be so cute. Alrighty, so the next thing to do is to sew the sides together from the inside. Now, because I'm apple shaped and I could always use a little extra room on my body, I am going to stitch the seam allowance a lot smaller than the 5/8, just in case. I kind of tried it on the top over my shirt a few minutes ago, and I always like to give myself a little extra room because the way this is constructed, I can take a little bit out of it before I put the band on. And I believe this is the last thing I'm going to do today because I want to stay fresh. I don't want to feel stressed about making this beautiful dress. I'm so enjoying the colors. It is coming out so lovely. I might have to throw a party myself because, I don't know, this dress needs to go out. At least before one of my daughters comes along and it goes out with them first. But if it does, it's okay. It's okay. All right, so I'm going to stitch the sides, and that's it for night. And then they're going to have to rest upon my dolly, my dress form, and we'll start again on Monday because I have a no-sew on Sunday rule because I'm trying to do that Sunday day of rest. Okay, one more press before the night is through. Now I just had a thought. Did I buy a fuchsia zipper this week when I went to the fabric store? Uh-oh. All right, that's enough for today. We'll try again tomorrow. Hi, we're back at it. Another day, and I think we can finish this dress today. All right, the next step is to work with the waistband. We're going to treat piece number 14, which is the upper waistband. We are going to treat it like we did the bodice front. We are going to add piece number 14, which is the overlay. We're going to gather this and also place it on the waistband. Now, just to be sure things lined up, I folded my piece number 7, I believe, the base of the waistband, and I folded it in half and then lined it up with the center of my dress. And then I measured it to the waistband treatment, because that is where it's going to touch at the side. So I kind of wanted to make sure that despite the notches and everything, that they both lined up. And then the ends lined up as well. Okay? So I folded them on those places and ironed them, so it kind of gave me a guideline of where my ruching stitches were going to line up on at the sides. Okay, so now that I have this base, I'm going to gather my overlay along those lines. I'm going to do my stitching. This time I'm not going to use a white basting stitch. I'm going to go ahead and use 2 fuchsia basting stitches on those lines, and then I'm going to place them and stitch them all along this waistband. Okay, so now we're going to stitch down our overlay along the center back line, the gathering lines at the sides, and then eventually all the way around. We're going to kind of baste it in place so that when we handle it, the lace doesn't shift. Okay, so now I've stitched all the way around the waistband, and I'm going to remove all of these pins, and then we'll move on from there. Our next step is going to be to pin the lower edge of your bodice to your gathered waistband, and you're going to match up your seam lines and pin in place, and then you're going to stitch. So for instance, this is my side seam, and it's matching my bodice side seam, and this is my center front. It's matching the center front of my waistband, and here's another side seam right here, and it's matching the side seam of my bodice piece. So I'm going to line that up, pin it, and then stitch it. All right, now that you have stitched the waistband to the bodice edge, now it's time to do the what do they call it? The under midriff, which you have to interface first. I'll do that and I'll be right back. Now, after interfacing under midriff piece number 8 and folding it on the stitching line and pressing it on the other side, we are now going to attach this to the bodice lining. Now you remember my funky lining, and I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the upper midriff, only this time I'm attaching it to the lining. All right? Time to stitch and trim. All right, so it's quite exciting. We have stitched our waistband, our midriff, our upper midriff onto the front piece, and our lower midriff onto the lining. Now we're going to bring both pieces together, and you're going to hand baste the edges so they line up. Okay, so that gives it an extra bit of ruching because they're two different lengths, right? This piece number 14 is this long, piece number 8 is this long, so they have to match up before we attach the skirt. But this is a hand basting thing that we're going to do. We're going to hand baste this and then pin it in place. And then we're going to attach the skirt, okay? And with your basting, so now the front and the back match up with this additional basting. It gives you more ruching on the dress in the back. And there's the lining, the lower midriff, and they're all lined up and ready to go. Okay, now you just have to do the other side. Now that you have basted it in place and matched it up, go ahead and put in a little stitch. I want to put a little stitch in there to keep it secure before we add zipper and the skirt. This dress is coming along. All she needs now is to attach her skirt, and then we're going to place a zipper into place. I might come back later this evening after I make lunch and work on the skirt, but alas, I have no 14-inch invisible fuchsia zipper. So we won't be able to finish it until tomorrow, but I might see you tonight. Another day. And now it's on to the skirt. All right, we are going to stitch the 3 skirt pieces together at the sides, except for one side, we're going to leave open to place the zipper inside. So check your markings on your pattern and see if they leave a marking for that. Let me see, did they? Place on fold. So on this side somewhere, we're going to measure our zipper. All right. Okay. But we're going to stitch the other sides together. I love a French seam. Everybody knows I love a French seam. So on 2 of them, 2 of the connections, I'm going to do a French seam, but I'm going to leave one open to place the bodice back and the zipper on. After you've stitched the skirt panels together, make sure that you leave one end open. So I stitched 1 to the 2nd and to the 3rd, and I did a French seam on it. You do not have to do a French seam on them. You can double stitch it and trim. After you do that, then you go and you stitch your overlay in the same manner. 1 panel to the 2nd panel, 2nd panel to the 3rd panel, but do not close up the skirt. Alrighty, so now here's the tricky part, or just the instructions. We are going to attach the skirt bottom to the under midriff that's attached to the lining. We're going to attach this to the under midriff along the stitching line. So we did 2 rows of gathering stitches at the top. I forgot to mention that. And then we're going to go ahead and gather it and attach it to the lining, the under midriff lining. Okay? All right. Now that we're fully pinned, I am going to stitch the skirt to the under midriff. Now I'm going to take all my pins out and I'm going to trim and I'm going to steam or press this hem towards the inside of the waistband, and then I'm going to get started on the overlay. The overlay is the same process. You stitch the 3 underlay pieces together, leaving the 2 ends out because that's going to be the back seam that you're going to put your zipper on. And you are going to do 2 gathering stitches along the top edge. But this time you are going to attach that skirt to the actual bodice of the fashion fabric. All right? All right, just in case you get confused, I'll go ahead and talk you through it again when I get to the stage where I'm attaching that skirt. Okay, at this stage, guys, this is how the inside of your garment should look. This is my facing. This is my lower midriff, and here's the skirt attached to that. Your other side should be free and hanging free. All right, as you can see, we have not attached anything yet to the fabric, fashion fabric side and the lining. We haven't added anything. We're about to gather our overlay though, and we're going to go and attach that. Okay, so now this time, this is the inside of the dress. Here's our fashion fabric with the overlay attached. We are going to be adding our overlay to this bodice edge now. Matter of fact, to help it out, let me flip it around to make sure I don't confuse anyone. Okay. All right, so now I'm ready to gather and attach my gathered skirt to this side. All right, I am all pinned and ready to stitch. That was a very large skirt. Good job. Once again, it's time to de-pin, press, and trim. And then after that, we're heading to that invisible zipper that, that the back of this dress needs. Now, I know this was a substantial gathering. The lace was quite a bit, but it's all gonna be worth it because I think it's gonna be a beautiful dress. Do not skip the pressing. You'll thank me. It'll be easier when it's time to attach the bodices together. We are getting there. Now my front skirt and my back skirt are attached. My overlay, my inside, I cannot wait. Now, time for a zipper. Okay, so I have included a card to another fellow YouTuber, Marcy Harrell. She has done, in my opinion, one of the best examples of how to insert a invisible zipper. So I'm going to insert that in there because this video is getting really, really long. And so if this is your first time doing that, you can head over there and see how to insert an invisible zipper. I'm going to insert this one and then show you what comes next. All right, so I've inserted my zipper. Now, After you've inserted the zipper on the fashion fabric side of the dress, we have all this inside lining to clean up. So what we're going to do is turn the dress inside out, and we are going to get right back to that zipper, and this time we are going to pin the inside lining and the lace overlay along this seam from the top of the zipper to the bottom, and we are going to stitch as close as we can without getting the needle in the teeth of the zipper. So we're going to turn it inside out, turn it around, and I'm going to stitch along the top here. And what it's going to do, it's going to enclose the zipper and the lining in a very nicely finished seam. If you don't see it, let me show you. I'm about to stitch it and you'll see what will happen. So now that I stitched from the top of the zipper, pulling the little tag of the top of the zipper through the seam, I stitched from there all the way down to the bottom of the zipper, as close to the zipper as I could get, sandwiching in the zipper in between the fashion fabric and the lining, and the lining and the lower midriff, right? And so what happens is, when I get as close as I can, but not cutting into the zipper, when I turn it inside out, it encases the zipper and all of the things, all the raw edges inside, all the way down. Okay, so I'll show you. All right, so one side is raw because I haven't stitched this side yet, but this side is finished. And I will show you it when I am done. I'm going to do the other side and show you what it looks like. All right, now that I have secured the back of the dress to the front of the dress, and the zipper is in between these two pieces, I'm going to stitch from the very top of the back neck edge all the way down along this seam, but not catching any of the zipper teeth that you can feel underneath here. And it's going to give us a nice finish on the inside of our dress. All right, now that I've stitched both sides in that way, when I turn my dress right side out, it ends up, give me a sec. When I turn my dress right side out, then the edge of my zipper and my facings and everything that are included in the back are now nicely enclosed in that stitch. So when we zip it up, which thank goodness it zips up, and we look at the inside of the dress, it's nice and clean, and the zipper is encased in fabric. So now it just needs a press. All right, so the dress is almost finished. All this dress needs is a hem. Oops, I forgot something. The waistband needs to be attached to the waist. Oh my goodness. Now it's time for some hand sewing. We are going to be attaching the inside under midriff to the outside midriff along the line of the overlay and the lining, or the overlay and the fashion fabric. We are going to be hand stitching these two seams together. Okay, now movie, video, music. This is the final step. It's all that's left is the hem. Now there's a natural edge on my lace, so I'm gonna leave that alone because it's a nice fixture, and this crinkle lace is a bit of a it's a whole thing, so I don't really want to do this kind of hem on it. I'm gonna leave that alone, but I'm gonna do a baby hem on this. And I'm also going to put a card to Marcy Harrell's channel on how to do baby hems. I just think she does a really good job, and I think you'll really enjoy her. All right, so we have a chance for a little bit of a reflection. I am trimming after on my baby hem. Hopefully you watched Marcy's video, but this is the stage in which I'm trimming the extra fabric before I turn it over one more time. And then when I do that, this dress will be done. I know it was a really long video, but working with lace and 2 different fabric types and fitting and all that stuff sometimes takes a bit more than you would normally expect. But I really enjoyed this dress. I love the color. I love how it came out. I fit it on me on the waist before, but you never know. You try stuff on, you try stuff on afterwards, and you're like, this is not quite right. As this morning, I tried on my avocado blouse. There's something about it. I just don't like it. I don't know if it's, I don't know. Something about it doesn't feel as joyful as my Gilbert blouse or, things like that. Those things happen. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Those of you who sew a lot, you could skip around to see the stages of the dress or skip all the way to the end. And those who are new sewers or sewing for the first time, I hope it lets you see that you can break anything down into small parts and be successful. If you mess up, don't worry about it. I even messed up on this dress. I was not comfortable with the waistband, so I decided to cut another one with about 2 more inches on it. And then when it was time to make the skirt, it occurred to me, I didn't have any extra fabric for this dress. I had cut that new waistband out of the overlay for for the skirt. So I was like, oh dear. These things happen when you're sewing. These things happen when you're sewing. I had plenty of this satin, like this taffeta. I had plenty of that, so I cut that out. And then I was busy making plans with that material. I was going to make a shirt because I loved the finish. I loved this stretch lace and how beautiful it was. Well, and there wasn't any extra stretch lace. There was only stretch lace, and that was the skirt of your dress. But luckily, I had enough to make this really lovely dress. So I hope you enjoyed sewing along. I hope you enjoyed making something. Or if you just like to view it, like as soon as I finish with that, I'm going to go watch the new Mimi G sew along that just dropped this morning. So, you know, it's very enjoyable. Alrighty, I think I am near the edge. Okay, next time you come back, it'll be a shot of the dress. And just like that, she's done. I hope you enjoyed this sew along.